the renewal of visas. Okay, if you have renewed, if you have leave to remain, for example, spouse visa or even domestic, just any renewal, just make sure you apply well in advance, because over the summer I've had few cases where they've, although they've applied, it's not too late, you know, because you know you've got your expiry date on your visa, and you are you know, you can't stay in the UK, you're not an overstay until the visa has passed and you haven't done anything about it. But the law also on immigration, under the Immigration Act, there is a specific provision that if you have made an application before your visa has expired, but you're still waiting, and your visa has expired and you're still waiting for the decision from the Home Office, it means that you have a permission to continue to stay in the UK without any, you know, without any threat of being deported or being discriminated. Okay, I'm saying discriminated because it should be connected with the employment. I don't know what's happening. I think I'm stuck rolling. So there is that provision that you can continue even though your visa has expired, as long as you've made that application in time. But there's a but, because lawyers will know this, but employers won't. And from their training, all they want to see is a black and white from the employee to show that they have a right to work. So that is the biometric card that says you have a right to work. And couple of my clients over the summer have had difficulty with their employers, and I had to call one of the employers to confirm that we've made an application, because otherwise she would have been suspended from her employment. And it doesn't seem to be fair that, you know, if she made that application a week before her visa expired, but then it usually takes a few weeks, several weeks, you know, 3 to 5 weeks before you hear back from the Home Office with confirmation that you are allowed to, that you have made an application and that it's being processed. And this is what the employer requires, the case ID that the Home Office has issued. So they need it to check on their system to see if their employer has actually made an application for the visa. And so I had this conversation with the employer, because it doesn't, as I said, it doesn't seem to be fair that the employer gets suspended from work because they couldn't provide this visa from this right to work or a document from the Home Office. So luckily we received a confirmation acknowledgement with the case ID, I think within 2.5 weeks from making the application. But sometimes, in my experience, it's normally longer. Okay, and that's quite a problem for you, especially if you're working, because your employer will want to see this biometric card or see a letter from the Home Office confirming that showing that you have made an application and they've acknowledged it. I wanted to make sure that you know that you have to prepare for it well in advance, because when I spoke to one of the employers, she said, well, it's not really, it's not a problem. We've warned the client, we've warned the employee to apply well in advance. But then, if it's quite human nature to wait until the last minute, and so I do it. So, but I know that for those who don't want to be inconvenienced, and especially if your work is so important, you need the money, make sure you prepare and apply well in advance. And I would advise that maybe 4 to 6 weeks before your visa expiry date, so that you then have time to get the letter from the Home Office confirming that they have received your application, and with a case ID to give to your employer in case your employer asks for the proof that you have made that application. Okay, so that's about the leave to remain renewal. The other thing I wanted to, share with you is about employment rights and immigration. And I think some people feel that they have to stay with their employer. They feel stuck because they're waiting for their immigration application to come through, especially those who are on short-term visas, like for example, domestic worker visas. Some may feel that they have to stay with the employer, even though the employer is exploiting them, maltreating them, and requiring them to work long hours and not paying them very well. They feel that they have to stay, and that really upsets me, because you don't have to stay with the employer. Please find another employer, because there's a lot who will be willing to employ you. And I know, you'll be scared. You will be scared to leave your employment for 2 to 3 weeks, just in case, because you need the money to send back home. But please don't stay with an abusive employer, because I just don't understand why you should, because you're waiting for your immigration status. I have one client who I've been assisting with their application for indefinite leave to remain, and on the day, in that morning, she was messaging me and asked, can I please leave my employer now? Do you think I'd be okay to leave the employer? And I think she's been waiting for a long time. I don't think she's particularly happy with her employment, but she didn't have a choice, because she needed to renew her visa and then wait for that indefinite leave to remain before she could make a decision. And very lucky for her, because on that same day, I received her indefinite leave to remain, and so she could make a decision to resign. But even then, she found it really difficult to, give notice to the employer that she's leaving. And I don't really understand this, because the United Kingdom, in the UK, people are different, okay? And the law protects the employees. So if you feel unhappy about your employment, if you feel that your employer is exploiting you, please, write it down, and then, try and write it down and raise it with her and say, look, you are unhappy with the employment. Can we change a few things? Because I can't do this. Like, for example, in her case, she was expected to work 14 days in a row, and that's really not acceptable. No one can work 14 days in a row, especially if the work is heavy. She feels that she couldn't say anything, and she didn't want to, even with my advice, she didn't want to do anything. So if you are on, this is linked with immigration, because if you think that you have to stay because you feel that you don't have any options, that's not right. You have an option, and you have the employment law in the UK who can give you, protection, and that's what the law is there for. Okay, so just for an example, I mentioned on my status, I acted for a client who was pregnant, who was a nanny, and as soon as she raised with her employer, as soon as she told the employer that she was pregnant, then she, even a few days after that, she got dismissed. And so we took the employer to the tribunal and won. So if she just left, obviously she was very upset, because she thought, well, what did she do to make them dismiss her? She could only think about the fact that she was pregnant. But I'm sure if she didn't do anything, the employer would have gotten away with dismissing somebody who was pregnant. And so this is a typical example of how employers can just violate your employment rights. But without you enforcing it, then yes, they can get away with it. Okay, so there's so many things, so many organizations, Citizens Advice Bureau. I think I'm not sure Kalayan do that, but the Voice of Domestic Workers. Just talk to someone about anything that you're unhappy with your employment. Don't keep it to yourself, because if you think that things you can bear it, but you don't know whether what you're doing, you know, you could have gotten help. Okay, so in this case, the client, you know, came to me, and then, you know, I was able to help her. And these days, it used to be that it was difficult to take employers to the tribunal, because they changed it. You have to pay the tribunal fee to sue them, but they've abolished that now, and so therefore you can, you know, get a lawyer to help you to take them to employer. Okay, I mean, to take them to employment tribunal. So that's basically it. It's so nice to be back. Okay, let me just check if, because I can't see any questions, so I'm just going to check on my phone to see if there's any questions, to see if there's any comment. Oh, there is comment. Okay. Okay. My background. No, not planned. Not planned. Okay. One sec. Okay, let me just check about the. Okay. Oh, wait. We don't want to. Okay. Can I advise, ask question here? I'm allowed to do it here. Can I advise? Yes, Margie. Margie. Yes, you can. You can ask advice here. Just write it down, and I will answer it. I can't see any other comments. Okay, so I think, well, Margie, if you want to just write it down, and I will get back to the recording, and I'll be able to answer your questions. So any questions? Yes, just do that. Okay. Okay, guys, if there's any if there's anything you want to ask, just you know, leave message. And hopefully I will be doing this every, well, maybe twice a week now, to catch up with the updates and to give you more information, and hopefully to be more helpful. Okay, have a lovely evening, have a lovely weekend. Bye.